Hi everyone and welcome to Walk the Talk with SHOPLINE. I'm Ismahan and today we will be sharing some tips on how to stay in business during and post MCO. Oh, and we've got a special guest too, so stay tuned. All right, so joining us today we have Daniel Cerventus, a seasoned entrepreneur who runs a community with over 25,000 entrepreneurs in Malaysia. This community leader has also built multiple businesses both offline and online. Thank you for joining us today, Daniel, and welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, how are you doing today?
Quite okay. Just during the whole MCO, everything's there's more work to be done, so it's busier than ever.
Productivity is good during a time like this. All right, so can you tell us a little bit about the community group and what are some of the activities that you guys run?
So the group started off about 10 years back, but it was sort of left to my ex-business partner to run, and we took over back the group in December 2018. At that point in time, it was 8,000 participants, and over a year, we grew it up to 25,000 strong.
Wow.
So the group purpose is to support the entrepreneur and startup community in Malaysia. And like when I talk about entrepreneurs, it's like all sort of entrepreneurs, from whether you want to start your first business to whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur. There's so a big variety of folks that are actually in the group. We have been actually doing this whole MCO, doing a daily live stream of interviews of key people, key inside people from presidents of association to New York Times bestselling authors to seasoned entrepreneurs to share on their perspective on how to survive and thrive and adapt during this whole COVID-19 situation.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm so glad that you guys are doing this and I'm glad that it has grown so much. So, this is a really difficult time for many businesses given the circumstances of the COVID-19 crisis. Many businesses are experiencing a drop in sales. From your experiences, what are some strategies that businesses can implement to ensure continuity now and post MCO?
So there's actually three things to look at in terms of this. Generally, what you want to try to do is basically, one is how do you allocate existing resources. Two is second is really to adopt more digital technology like digital transformation. And third is really to try to look at pivoting your business, whether it's having other additional revenue stream and so on. So the first one is actually fairly simple. The first one is if you have existing stock, if you have existing thing, try to pre-sell it, try to sell it in advance and try to work with your customer. It might not be high in priority for them, but it could be something they might want to use in the future, so you can pre-sell it. But embracing digital transformation is actually one key thing that a lot of businesses are not doing. Basically, they are not adapting to key technology for them to survive over it, because there's so many things you cannot do in person because we are all stuck at home.
Yeah.
And so digital marketing will be one of it, and how do you manage your staff, remote working, all this kind of thing. Second thing will be in terms of pivoting. Pivoting is actually how can you use your existing business and transform into something else entirely. So that could be something adjacent to it. So a good example would be if you look at some of the companies out there, travel companies, they all of a sudden become like grocery companies.
Right.
So there's actually a lot of examples out of that. The third thing is to look at alternative source of income. So that is either leveraging your existing resources or actually try to figure out how to build another business so your business would be more insulated in terms of future event, that you have there is a division of risk from other source of income.
Yeah, so basically like a side hustle, right?
Yes.
I like that point. Do you have any companies that you know of with that experience and has seen a positive outcome from that?
For side hustle?
Mm-hmm.
So generally, a lot of them actually have started to try to think about it. So a good example would be Burger Lab would be a prime example. Their main business is essentially selling burgers.
Right.
And during MCO, they decided to do something. They decided to sell home kit, essentially kits that you basically leveraging on existing resources and start selling home cooked kits that people can make burgers at home. So that is something that is quite done a lot in the F&B world. So a lot of them end up doing that. Some of them actually end up converting their business into sort of like a CSR thing to provide food for frontliners. So Copper is a good example of that. There are some other businesses that have totally built additional thing like some software house. Not software house, some startups. What they do is they actually end up building software houses. So they will outsource their tech team to other people to generate revenue.
Okay, cool. So, as someone who is in touch with various entrepreneurs, SMEs, and business owners, what are some of the immediate adaptations and changes that you've noticed businesses have made since the beginning of this crisis?
So in terms of basically there's some stuff that are internal and there's some stuff that are external. In terms of stuff that are internal is usually your own emotion, your own how do you manage your staff, how do you manage your team, because it's such a different situation. There's so much uncertainty, there's so much anxiety, and I see a lot of good entrepreneurs step up to the challenge and become better leaders. They start to form support groups and try to work within other people that they used to consider competitors. And they started to work together, which is actually something very good. So they are doing their best to actually try to preserve their staff and bring morale up for the whole industry. The external factors could be in terms of the economy or other things. And so some of the stuff that within their control, they are basically grouping up lobbying parties to try to lobby for like discount for rentals and working with their supplier to actually have a delay in payment or more longer credit term for this. So I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs do things to adapt, and which is really amazing to look at the ingenuity and the resilience of a lot of the Malaysian entrepreneurs.
Okay, so moving on to our next question. Some of our audience might have missed your shows. What are some of the key lessons you've gotten from interviewing all your speakers?
So the speakers that I have interviewed are coming from a wide variety of people. So like they are from entrepreneurs, they're from investors, they are from people who have started a multi-million-dollar company without funding. So I think some of the key lessons that I have learned basically is like let's go with some names. So New York Times bestselling author Chris Gilbo always say that there's always another way. So there's always a third way.
Yeah.
There's always going to be another way for you to figure out things. So there's ways that people will tell you. There's ways and then there's always other ways that you can try to figure out. So don't be discouraged when you cannot figure out things, because there's always going to be alternative ways for you to get things done.
Yeah.
I think the classical saying is doesn't matter from Deng Xiaoping, it doesn't matter is it a white cat or black cat, as long as it catches the rat, it's a good cat.
I like that.
So that's one lesson.
Yeah.
Another thing is basically about adaptability and survivability. I think Hian Go of Open Space Venture did talk about a lot of companies are having product market failure. So as a startup, we always talk about product market fit. Product market failure is like all of a sudden your business doesn't work. And so you have to start pivoting, you have to start working on it. And so one of the good stories that he shared that resonated a lot with me is he invested in this clothing company, and it's an e-commerce clothing company that has like delivery all around Indonesia to the villages and so on. And they were basically panicking when all this whole thing started. It's like, okay, the business is going to die, and etc. Then Kian mentioned to them like, hey, you guys just happen to be a logistic company that happened to have a clothing line.
Right.
So start thinking about utilizing your strength, and so they actually like try to pivot to become a logistic delivery towards delivering stuff to the villagers. So that was amazing. That is really, really amazing.
Yeah, they just made it work, right?
Yeah. So the third one is actually through Porter Erisman. Porter is the former VP of Alibaba. Porter was the person involved in the whole SARS incident during Alibaba back in the day. So Alibaba just only turned a profit, and SARS happened, and so they have to scrape off every single plan out there. There was staff that were suspected with SARS, got infected with SARS, and they were quarantined at home. It's the same. It's really similar situation what we're experiencing now.
Yeah.
But back in those days, it was dial-up. It was slow internet, and it wasn't laptop. It was desktop. So they had to bring their desktop back home and work. But the beautiful thing is actually about getting people together and work together.
Yeah.
So they start rallying the whole company to get people to start working together. And in fact, it got so crazy, they even got their mom and dad or parents or whoever in the family to start helping out the company. So it becomes this whole thing that unites the company to grow the company.
Yeah.
And Alibaba has through that has grown, grew from what it is to something a lot bigger. They have launched Taobao, they have launched a couple of stuff based on that.
Yeah.
And SARS has sort of united and allowed the company to move really, really far ahead. And that's looking at opportunity. And how do you do it is by rallying your troops and getting them to work together and come up with stuff that they probably have never thought about.
Yeah, that reminds me of how Microsoft launched during the oil crisis and stock market crash in the 70s. That's when they developed Microsoft. It reminds me so much of that. Very cool. All right, so what are some tips about adaptability? You've mentioned a few, but things are happening so fast around us. How do we adapt accordingly, whether it's mentally, emotionally, or physically?
I think one thing, so if mentally, it's actually, I subscribe to the idea of stoicism. There are things within your control and things beyond your control. If there are things beyond your control, do your best to work towards it. If there's things out of your control, don't sweat about it, because whatever you do, you will not be able to change that. But there are things that is always in control. So more often than not, that you try to identify those things, separate both of them, and you realize your life is a lot more easier because of that. Second is adaptability in terms of learning, and overnight everyone start learning like crazy. Like people who have never made sales call with Zoom or anything has all of a sudden started to adapt it. People who restaurants who have never done delivery all of a sudden started to do it.
Yeah.
Companies that have never adapted LinkedIn or online marketing all started to do that. So there are so much resources out there, and we live in a time of humanity that all these resources we do not have to go to the library, is available like on our phone, and it's like you can get it as soon as you want to search for it. And even if you cannot find it, you can find people who knows about it or can point you to the right direction. So be curious, ask better questions, and start learning and start adapting from that.
I like that. That's quote of the year, guys. Focus on what you can control. Start learning. Do as much. Everything is there. We have the opportunity. It's there. We just have to take it. Thank you so much, Daniel. It has been an absolute privilege to have you on the show, and I've learned so much from you today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Stay tuned to the next episode of Walk Talk with SHOPLINE.